And the
podcast
begins with a song of rebellion.
How can this
podcast
be my life?
CD Burners.
Hello, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Why are you so cute? Why are you looking at me?
I'm not looking at you.
What is he doing? Where's he going? You wanna come
Timmy,
up here?
you left me.
Here. Come up. Up.
Oh, he left me. Hello, teens, 31-year-old teenagers. Today is the day. Good guest on the episode today, talking about a very important album, very fun album, piano pop punk album. It's called Leaving Through the Window by the band Something Corporate. And on the show today, we have an interview from Andrew McMahon.
Yeah, it was awesome. We did it before.
Yeah, we did it yesterday.
Yeah.
But today we get to talk about the album in private and, you know, share our true thoughts without Andrew here. So
It was hard to condense all of the things that I have always wanted to talk
ask
to
him?
Andrew. Like, yeah, and talk to him about.
yeah.
Because I do think that he is so awesome. Like, I think he's just like so fucking cool and talented that it was harder. It was a hard interview to do.
He's one of the bigger guests that we've had on the show. And yeah, but luckily he's just a really nice guy and he's really easy to talk to. And he's like kind of I think he's at a point in his life where he's kind of like an open book about everything. I feel like he's in a really good place personally with everything in his life. And he can like look back on the Something Corporate days with a really fresh, appreciative, gracious perspective.
And like a fondness.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is, you gotta have the time pass in case you have some sort of like resentment against your thing that you made or like hesitance. And I think that, I'm not saying he did, but I think in a lot of ways, like, he's started so many other things since then and had such a like fulfilling career that, I don't know, I guess for me, if I was to look back at that after some of the songs that he's written, I'd be like, this feels immature to me or something. I don't know. I mentioned it to him on the podcast in the nicest way possible, because I did ask a bunch of people what they felt about this album. And they were like, in the nicest way possible. For real. It sounds like, no, you couldn't be an adult and write this.
Yeah, it sounds like the authentic adolescent teenage experience. It also is just like really sunny and fun. Like they're from Orange County, and it sounds like it's from Orange County.
Yeah, no, it does.
It sounds like you're going to high school in OC.
He did a great job at that. Like that is, to me, that's what Jack's Mannequin really sounds like.
Yeah, that's when he got really beachy.
Yeah, to me, that's like, yeah, that's strange that you mentioned that. Like, I haven't really thought about if you can listen to a band or an album and pick a specific place that it absolutely sounds like.
Well, you think this album could come out of New Jersey?
No, that's the thing.
Fucking way.
I know, but like I never really looked at an album and I was like, this sounds like this city.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bright Eyes does that really well.
It feels like when you're in Omaha and it's dreary, and I
think Bright Eyes does that. Oh man, what a cool.
Well, that's why there's stuff like Midwest emo, and then there's like the Jersey scene. It's at this time, guys, like the internet wasn't like super connecting everybody. Like it was just beginning. We still had these like pockets of scenes, and like people were influenced by the people that they were like hanging out with and playing music with, and the shows that they were going to with their friends. And that's why, specific regions had certain sounds, and like nowadays that doesn't really exist.
I want to pose a question to the audience. What are some albums that sound like a city to you?
Like Wilco's album sounds like Seattle.
To you guys, it doesn't even have to be in this genre. It would be cool if it was, because that's the genre that we do. But what albums to you sound like a very specific place? I think that's something that I would love to hear everybody's opinion on.
Call in, let us know.
or comment
on Spotify or YouTube. Let us know.
or Instagram. Cam, you should cut this one up. I'd love to see the responses. They're like, you sound like you're from Gay Guy City.
The number, in case you need it, is 323-310-2739. Give us a call and let us know what you think. If you have a album that sounds like a certain city, give us a call and let us know.
You sound like you're from Suck-Assville.
You sound like you're from Ariana Grande Town.
Yeah. Assholes.
Okay, so yeah, the album Leaving Through the Window, it comes out on May 7th, 2002, and it is Something Corporate's major label debut. But it's kind of like pseudo not a major label debut because it's on Drive-Thru Records. But this is like in the pinnacle of the deal we talked about on the Hello Goodbye episode, the Drive-Thru MCA upstreaming deal. Andrew was a teenager. They put out all these EPs and he was like cutting his teeth playing shows at the observatory in OC. And like, you know, he was building this buzz and like, it was like a local thing, and music to him, he said it himself, it was his destiny. There's nothing else this man's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I agree. And you can tell, like, and I think that for a lot of these artists that just consistently write so much to fill this, it's like you're filling this, might have said it on here before, but I've definitely talked about it with artists in interviews where it's like, we have this thing that we need to fill. And in whatever, AA, they call it the God-sized hole. And I think that writing songs or doing the thing that you love and completing them and moving forward is, you know, that thing will never, that hole could never be filled. Pause. But I think it's about as close to finishing a song and writing a song and doing it is about as close as you can get to filling that like creative thing. And I think that for people like Andrew McMahon and, you know, a lot of the artists that we talk about that just consistently write stuff and quality stuff, it's just chasing that, filling that thing. And he's very much one of those guys.
Yeah, he's extremely prolific. You know, he's had several projects. He had Something Corporate, he had Jack's Mannequin, and then he has Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. He has a whole lot. He has a very, very big catalog. Interestingly enough, we just finished talking about the Get Up Kids, which was kind of the first time we were hearing synth in emo and pop punk. This is the first time that we're hearing piano in pop punk, really.
Like piano driven.
Yeah.
And
like you're right, he's writing the songs on the piano, he's performing them on the piano. That is the main thing.
Yeah, and you know, we spoke about it a little bit in the interview, but you know, I was watching a lot of this old Warped Tour footage because we're doing stuff with that, and we had to go through a lot of footage, and watching him on stage with a piano in front of a Warped Tour crowd. So fucking cool.
The thing about Andrew McMahon is that he doesn't play with a keyboard or a fake piano. He plays with the real piano. And we know this firsthand because we had Andrew McMahon come do a performance at Emo Night at the Echoplex, and we had to source and rent a real grand piano for him. And it was pretty not cheap, and they're hard to move. They're extremely heavy, and I remember we found out that they charge you per step to move that thing. So there's like 3 steps to get it onto the stage of the Echoplex, and each one of those quite expensive.
Yeah. So, I mean, because you think about it, it's like those logistical things you don't think about at all. You're just like, cool, put a fucking piano in the venue. Like, you guys put other shit in there. Pianos are like they're like companies that just move pianos. Like there's piano moving companies. Like I think we had to talk to one of them.
I don't know how he fucking lugged a piano around on Warped Tour. That's wild.
Yeah,
he's lugged it everywhere he's gone.
Well, he also said, you know, you'll hear it in the interview, but he said that it like absolutely prepared him for being a touring musician and being in a band. You know, but I think he also added that amount of fucking having a real piano on stage to his, that kind of like multiplies the amount of hard work you do by tenfold.
Ben Folds.
Which, dude, okay. I know this is not a Ben Folds episode, but going through this, now I'll take the aux. I think piano is the coolest thing anybody can do or play. I think it is so awesome. I revisit this Ben Folds video.
Is it the one where he's on chat roulette?
It is. If you guys have not seen this.
It is?
Yes.
Oh.
It is so fucking funny. To me, this is like a dream come true. Like he's playing in, what is it, like South or North Carolina, and he's like online at chat roulette, just going through people and writing songs about them live in front of a live audience. And they're so fucking funny and good. Guy just said, what the fuck?
What else have you got to say besides what the fuck?
I think that this...
What is that? It's a snake.
Like, oh, there is one that like is catchy and good, and I sing. He is so fucking funny, and this is a talent that like whatever. Anyway, it's fucking. If you guys haven't seen that, it's Ben Folds doing like chat roulette live, and it's. I'm just like, I think that's where I was like, there's nothing cooler than being able to play piano.
That is true, and just like make up songs like that.
It's so fucking awesome.
Yeah. Okay, back to something corporate.
Oh, the piano.
Yeah.
Didn't know this, but
Piano fact?
something corporate piano fact.
Okay.
Which the piano was so heavy that it kept breaking stages.
No way.
Yeah, so since most pop punk bands didn't have pianos, the venues weren't used to dealing with one. So on early tours, Andrew's grand piano was so heavy that it cracked stages and even broke through a stage one time.
Dude, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I thought was really interesting, I heard an interview with him where he was like talking about how he didn't really listen to pop punk before he was part of this scene.
Was it the interview that we did yesterday?
Did he say that?
Yeah.
I heard it. Well, he also said on his interview with Stryker on Tuna on Toast. But I thought that was really interesting because he kind of like changed pop punk, and a lot of this is, really pop punk sounding.
Well, it's interesting because he he was obviously a really big Billy Joel, that type shit. And so I was like, how did you find your way into this
scene?
Yeah. And at the same time, I was like, I wanted to know if like, I can see a band that's a super huge dicks that are like heavy being like, what the fuck is this? Like being shitty, especially at that time when everybody was so up in arms about everything. I was like, totally see that. And I was like, dude, like, I wonder how much pushback he got. And he said that almost every band like really received him, but I really like wonder at if they were like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is this guy on here? And like,
okay, piano boy.
Yeah. Like you can see that. You can see some of this shit happening. And, it didn't sound like he experienced any of that. And he might just be being a nice guy, but I could really, that's just like the fucking nature of it. Like some bands are fucking dicks. And, he's just like, so I also, at the end of the interview, I asked about this like Prodigy thing, and it was like kind of like a well-known thing and said a lot. Like people said it, that he's like a piano prodigy. And it's like, if you hear that about somebody, that somebody is a prodigy, you kind of like go into something with like a pre-existing opinion, and like these kids are so young being in fucking bands like this. I could just see him getting like so much fucking pushback, but it sounded like he didn't, which is great. And I'm really happy that is the case because, you know, it's obviously like it well deserved. The songs are awesome. He's in an awesome band, but I'm just like, fuck, dude, you're like on all of these tours with these like pop punk and punk bands doing something
Totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah. But at the same time, it still fits. And
Yeah.
like this has become a classic staple of the emo and pop punk genre. I think it's super interesting that there was room at the table for piano pop in pop punk. Like, I think it just goes back to just the like, there's so many different sounds in this genre, and it's all tied by like community and scene. And like we talk about that a lot. It's like, you know, all these bands that were on Warped Tour sound so different from each other, but they were all like peers. There was so much like camaraderie.
And maybe it's just me putting myself in that position, but maybe there was just none of that experience. And it's like, everybody was just chilling and they're like sick. Like, this is great. Like, let's all do this thing together. And that is, you know, we just did a Get Up Kids episode. And like, if you were to be like emo, is it this, do these two things sound similar?
Kind of.
I
think so.
I don't. You know, like I think that like there's really like,
but like to the average lay person, like if you showed these to like your mom.
all right, let's say we did fucking what's a band that like Hawthorne Heights, right? Like we did a Hawthorne Heights album, and like you go, do these two things sound similar?
Yeah.
And you go, and it's like not really. And then they somehow managed to fit in the same world, which I think is so cool and such a testament to like our scene and emo in general, which is why I get so up in arms about people being pussies about like, this is what it is. And I'm like, it can be all of this.
Yeah.
And Andrew McMahon and Something Corporate was a really good example of that.
Andrew wasn't the only songwriter on this album.
Right.
There were three songs that were written by Josh Partington from the band. One of them is like, I think maybe the best song on the album, Hurricane. Great song. He also wrote Fall and You're Gone.
It wasn't the first album, but doing a lot of the research, people were like, it felt like a first album.
It wasn't. What was their first album?
It was an EP. They did an EP.
Yeah, that EP with Jim worked.
Audio Boxer?
Yeah, Audio
Boxer. Yeah.
Right.
And so like,
but they reused a lot of the songs from Audio Boxer and they put them on this album. They like redid them.
Yeah.
Which, you know, fair.
Yeah. I mean, they're fucking awesome songs. I think that they redid Hurricane.
Yeah.
I think. And I think they redid If You See Jordan. Which
Andrew let us know yesterday, If You See Jordan started taking off before this album was even made, just from the Audio Boxer EP. He said that he was already getting like picked up by K-Rock and shit. So that's cool. I've read other things that song was kind of like a throwaway song.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's supposed to be like a play on Fuck Jordan. But it's just spelled If You See Jordan. And it's about
I didn't know that. That's good.
It's about a real life high school bully named Jordan, and he just straight up like calls him out. And the end of that song is so funny. It's like, I don't care if you dye your hair, you'll always be a little redheaded bitch.
It's cool.
And isn't he
No, Andrew McMahon's awesome.
Isn't he like a natural redhead?
I think so. I mean, like, I think
so. I don't know. I was kind of like thinking like, oh man, that's harsh, like calling him a redheaded bitch, but maybe it's actually Jordan calling Andrew the redheaded bitch. Like that's like a quote from him.
I think that lyrically he's so good. I think he's such a good lyric writer.
Oh, you know what just came to me? I was thinking back to the video you just showed of Ben Folds, and then thinking about Andrew's interview the other day when he was talking about Constantine. Was that on our interview or just an interview I listened to? It was an interview I listened to.
You could say it's ours.
Yeah, it might have been ours. He basically said Constantine ended up as long as it did because he was literally just like freestyling it and like making it up for the girl that the song was about. Like, cause the girl was at the show. And so he just started, he was like, I'm going to win her back. And he just kept going. And the song is 10 minutes long.
It's awesome, dude. This is the first, like, I think in a lot of ways, this album was at least in the artists that we've spoken to, so unapologetically, like, this is about
Yeah.
girl. Like, I'm writing this as like a teenager about girls
And bullies.
and like, he's like, yeah, that is what it is.
And his name is Jordan, and I'm putting it in the fucking song title, and it's just fuck you, Jordan.
It's awesome. And like, there's another, like, that's why everybody that I was talking to was like, yeah, this was written by
a child.
Yeah. You know, there's also some other fun things that are like, I guess Punk Rock Princess started as a half joking response to the emo scene at the time. You know, it plays into the idea of a rebellious girl who doesn't need saving, but the fans just took the song more seriously than he expected, is what I read.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
I like the word play on like, you could be my heroine.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I could be your heroine. Like, she needs him like a drug, you know, but then it's like the female version of like the heroine, you know,
which is
very cool little word play.
It got to be so confusing for people who are like, English is not their first language. Like, why? Like, why does that? Why are these two things like remotely the same?
Yeah.
Then in 2002, Something Corporate toured with Newfound Glory, which put them in front of a more punk-oriented crowd, and it gave them
they changed the name. They're not called Newfound Glory anymore. They're called Old Found Glory.
Oh, we gotta get out of here. It's time to go.
I said it to JT from Hawthorne Heights.
It's very funny.
And he goes, yeah, we found it, guys.
Yeah, that's really funny. It's also a good JT. But anyway, they gained, like, for more punk people who would not really be exposed to this. And so it gained them like a really good reputation as a very good like live band.
I mean, I love the Newfound Glory name drop in the first song.
Yeah, literally in the first song. Do you want to just
play it?
Sure.
So that the people know what we're talking about. It's such a good album opener. And I think this is really funny. I feel like this album's really front loaded. Nope. This
isn't it?
I don't think this is it.
Here you go. Okay, it's playing.
Standing on the edge of morning, scent of sex and newfound glory.
Yeah, literally like the first like phrase or whatever.
Yeah. Who's having sex to Newfound Glory though?
Everybody is kind of.
That gets them women in the mood.
Kinda.
I don't know.
At least everybody, like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like everybody was banging to
NFG.
Yeah, at least
you were.
I wasn't ever having sex.
Hey, I forgot.
I've never had it.
That you are.
I'm also over that. I'm not having that. Not doing that anymore.
Yeah, you're done with it.
Yeah,
you're asexual.
It's not for me.
I like the Newfound Glory name drop. I think it's cool. I like that they're a part of the history of Something Corporate too. Like I think that tour is awesome, and he also said that was also like the first pop punk band that he got into because one of his ex-girlfriends like brought him to a Newfound Glory show.
Oh yeah, that was honestly really important part of growing up is like
a girl introducing you to music.
Yeah, stealing your ex-girlfriend's like humor and her band. Like it's like a really important part of like just taking their identity,
their personality.
Yeah, taking their personality. It's like like shout out Carrie Lynch. A lot of stuff from Carrie Lynch. So
yeah, and shout out Jordan. I took a lot of stuff from Jordan.
There you go. If you see her. They also wrote Constantine way before that album. It was originally recorded for something called Ready Break in 2000.
Well, didn't it like come out? I don't know the history of Constantine. I remember it was like it was released in Japan only for a while.
Why would they do that?
I don't know, bro. This is not a podcast about Constantine, but that is probably the song that got me into Something Corporate because I'm a sucker for like slow songs that are super emotional. But off of this album, what are some of your favorite songs?
Oh God. I really like Drunk Girl, which was supposed to be left off the album. I like the run of Kavanaugh Park, Fail, Straw Dog, Good News, Drunk Girl. And then I like the last song. Globes and Maps. I like all of these songs, honestly.
Did you know that the song The Astronaut was played in space to wake up the astronauts? Give me that aux. I think it was this song.
What does that mean?
They would it was like their wake up call. Like they would wake the astronauts up on the space station with this song every day. So yeah, they played that song to wake up the astronauts, and then there's an album that they put out in 2010 that's like their greatest hits or their best of. It's called Played in Space.
That's so cool. I didn't know that. They have a very rich history.
Yeah.
Of a lot of stuff. It's really difficult to stick on just this album.
It's true.
In my
even
opinion.
Just this band.
Yeah. It's very difficult to stick to this stuff. But I mean, he wasn't a fan of the emo when he got labeled as emo.
Who was? No one.
No one, I guess. But even though Something Corporate was grouped into the early 2000s emo movement, Andrew always saw himself as more of an alternative rock artist. He admired artists like Billy Joel and Ben Folds than more traditional emo bands. And then I wrote, please play the video of Ben Folds and Charlotte.
Okay. Well, we're not going to play that again.
We should.
I did hear one interview with him where he said that he wanted to be on a major label, like more than anything. And I think most people would have been like, fuck yeah, Drive Through Records.
Yeah.
I want to be that. And he just had no idea what it was. And it just he didn't care. He's like, I just want to be like a piano pop star.
Yeah. I mean, I think he just needed to play songs. I was like, that was his calling.
Right.
And I think like in order to get to that place, it's like, at that time you're like, a major label can help me get to that place.
Sure.
Do you know there's like podcast that's like dedicated to him?
No.
It's called Something in the Wilderness. And I think it like does go through like every song, or they would be way more qualified to do this.
Yeah, go listen to their podcast. I mean, go ahead. Yeah, we have nothing that we can even compare to this shit.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Go listen to Something in the Wilderness if you really want to do a deep dive. There's an episode that they have called I Don't Want a Job with Morgan.
It's like you can listen to them, find out way more about Something Corporate, and listen to the band as opposed to putting on Ben Folds.
As opposed to just skipping through a Ben Folds YouTube video for fucking 10 minutes.
That is so funny. I've told this story. I think I told it on the Hello Goodbye podcast. It doesn't matter, so I won't say it again. But that drive-through, when I went to drive-through, and I wanted to tell that to him, but I was like, I have to not say one of these things.
Gotta narrow it down, and the people have heard that a few times. I think.
Yeah, so I mean that was a big moment in this guy's life. But I did want to ask him, and he said on the podcast that listening back, he wasn't like a humongous fan of the way he was singing stuff back then. And the album did receive mixed reviews from about.
Joni said, low-key, no one loved this album. The highest review is All Music with 4 out of 5 stars. Drowned in Sound gave it 1 out of 5. There's one here that I think you'll love. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, Punk News. There's nothing special about this CD whatsoever. Go buy a Ben Folds 5 album if you want good piano-driven pop.
Yeah, see, the thing is like I'm not even comparing the two. I'm just saying like this is how cool a piano is what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm only saying like, look how cool this fucking instrument is. And the fact that like he is so good. I feel like people who play piano just like see things differently.
Well, you get to control everything. You're controlling like the percussion. It is a percussion instrument, and then you're controlling the chords, and you also can control the melody, and then you add the singing on top of it. It's like
really
it
crazy.
Is the ultimate instrument.
It's the best one. Yeah. There was a lot of bad fucking review. It was like hard to watch, and then you like go back or look at these, and you're like, dude, this is so fucking good. And it bummed. I hate.
You
them.
Really think that every song on this album is good? You don't think?
I think there's
14 fucking songs on this. You just looked at it and going, I like all of them.
I do like all of them. I do think the album is long.
There's some that you could get rid of.
Which ones?
Maybe Kavanaugh Park.
I liked.
It's nice.
That's the thing. It's like I did go back.
Oh, globes and maps. Get that out of here.
No, there was like a cool thing about
It's
it.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it's long as fuck. But like
I don't like that one.
Yeah, see, like
I think you could cut like 2 to 4 of these.
here's what I think. I think you could have made 2 albums out of this.
Probably.
I think that that's like what you could have done. And I think that if they would have done that, then critics might have been more receptive to it, because a lot of like, it does get like, for lack of better terms, piano-y.
Piano-y.
You know, like it does get.
It's just too long is what it is. Like, I feel like it wouldn't feel as piano-y if you had 4 less songs.
Yeah, I do agree. But, you know, at the same time, like talking to him yesterday, I was like, would you change anything? And I think that that's like, you know, what makes, I know a lot of people who this is their favorite album.
Yeah, totally. This is like the fan favorite.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. And there are like incredible smash hits off of this thing.
Well, what else do you want to say before we jump into our interview with Andrew?
I do want to just briefly touch on that. He wrote a book. He did a documentary.
Oh, yeah.
He had a lot of stuff. Like he got really sick. Like, I don't know. It's like after, or like right around, I think he was like 22. Got really sick after this, I don't know the timeline, but, you know, and it's kind of like led into Jack's Mannequin.
I loved his interview with Stryker, and he talks about like it's like a whole career spanning thing. I know we're focusing on one album from one band. His interview with Stryker, he goes into all of it, including like the Dear Jack stuff, and it's like 2 hours, but it's really a fantastic interview.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm like having you're like, is there anything else you want to say? I'm like, yeah, it has nothing to do with this album.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a lot to say, but it has nothing to do with this album. I think that this album, just like we kind of said the important stuff, where it was like, this was out of the norm. It fit in the category, and it was something different that the band was doing. And it was accepted into the world in which we live in, and kind of, you know, it propelled him into what he's doing today.
Other than Ben Folds, is there an if you like this, you might like that for you?
I didn't do that for this.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I mean, I don't
know anybody who's doing real modern piano pop punk except for Hunter DeBlanc.
Dude, that is so funny to be like, if you like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking recommend Hunter DeBlanc.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult. It's like hard to do it and make it as awesome as this. And I think that's like a testimony to something corporate.
Yeah.
Like if this was easy, there would be 20 other bands we could name.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
It's just not. At least in this category, in this like area of music, I don't know, dude. I'm like scrolling through.
I think a big one that Joni pointed out is Dashboard Confessional. And she wrote something here that is so kind of like, it ended up being kind of mean.
What?
But it's like mean about me.
What is it?
She said, this album is ahead of its time and also rocks. This album ushered in new opportunities for semi-hot, hopeless romantic white men. It's for nice guys that finish last. It's for boys who understand the meaning of different flowers. For boys who tripped in the hall a couple times and dreamed that a cheerleader would be standing over them when they looked up. I bet TJ loves these guys.
Damn, she roasted you. That's awesome.
And then she wrote, these were supposed to be 2 independent thoughts.
That is so funny. That's so funny.
Yeah, she asked me one day, she's like, did you love something corporate? Because it sounds so much like Dashboard, which I never put together, but I guess if you're comparing the album Dusk and Summer, it has that like Orange County Beach.
Yeah, the one that looks
rock.
like a Hurley ad.
Yes.
Yeah, look, man, I can't really pick something that is, you know, my brain goes to The Fray.
Yeah, you can go to places
But
like
it's
the
not-
Fray or Train or Ben Folds.
which I love the Fray. I have the Fray tattooed on me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love that stuff. So not a dig. Love it. I just can't. I think that that's a really great thing that I can't be like, hey, there's another like pop punk adjacent piano.
There
band.
really isn't.
What a good one. What a good thing to be.
Okay. Well, we got Andrew McMahon right here on CD Burners. Stay tuned for our interview with the man himself. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Make sure you like and prescribe and leave us a comment about if you have an album or a band that sounds like a certain place.
Yeah, please do that. I think that that's really fun. And I thought this was a good interview.
I think it was too. Enjoy.
Tried to not be annoying.
What's up, man?
Hey.
No, it's totally okay. TJ and I it was nice to catch up. Like, just we had to do this anyway. So
Awesome. Well, it's good to see you guys. How's everything going?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. I like that we all seem to be in the same tone of sweatshirt for the day.
Yeah, it's a good vibe.
I mean,
yeah, things are good, man. Just kind of rushing around, getting prepped for South by Southwest this week or next week, I should say. So just been working in the studio a bunch to get things ready for that, and yeah, life's good.
that's awesome.
What are you doing down at South by?
I'm doing a few things. So I'm doing a Jack's Mannequin gig with Band of Horses at Stubbs for C3. So for the sort of my management, it's their showcase, and for C3 presents. And then I'm actually doing like a keynote speech at their offices that I've been working on doing a keynote speech for a while now, and they're giving me the opportunity to sort of debut it there. So that's been the most of my prep. And then I'm also doing a panel on secondary market greed in the concert space right now, and our war with the secondary market to try and keep tickets affordable for fans.
Oh, that is I feel like we've experienced. I'd love to hear your keynote speak or keynote and panel on secondary market greed.
Well, the panel's on secondary market greed. The keynote is on the topic of reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I it's kind of fun at this stage of doing what I do to try and stretch out and sort of figure out how this has worked for so long and why I've been lucky enough to get to be in the music business for as long as I have.
I love that. Well, speaking of reinventing yourself, today we're talking about an album that you recorded when you were a teenager.
That's right.
Leaving Through the Window.
Yes.
And I think this is 3 band names ago, something corporate. Andrew, thank you so much for being on CD Burners. I don't know if you got like a brief on kind of what the podcast is, but we kind of try to just go like a little bit deeper on some of these really seminal albums, important albums for people. And we try to dig into the stuff that you can't really like look up online, give people an idea of like what it was like during the time period when this album was recorded, when it came out for you personally, culturally, like where things were at. And yeah, that's kind of the overview of what we're going to be digging into a little bit today. But yeah, I'll try
my best to remember. It was a long time ago, but I'll give you everything I got.
It's been really interesting because we've, a lot of the artists that we speak to, they're like, yeah, they just kind of say they have like the junket of like what is being asked of them per like album cycle. And it's funny to see like a light turn on in a lot of some of these artists being like, oh, actually, I remember that. So it's been really interesting, this whole process. But I mean, just like TJ said, like what, like, kind of take us back to what it was like for you at this time, like personally and musically, and what the hell is going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, look, so we started recording Leaving Through the Window, gosh, probably at the end of the year, end of 2001, beginning of 2002, right? And everything leading up to that moment, right? It was like I graduated high school in 2000, and the band was looking possible, right? Like we were selling out venues in Orange County, and it was probably about, I don't know, the spring of '01 when we started getting attention from labels, right? We had kind of like a little a production deal with Interscope. We were looking at maybe going there, and then Drive Through came along and signed the band. It was like a bird in the hand. It was like, okay, well, we had this other deal was looking good, and then Drive Through came along, and I didn't really know anything about Drive Through. I didn't really know anything about punk music, and so it was like kind of this, in my mind, it was like this weird fit. But going into the recording of Leaving Through the Window, we had started doing some shows with Drive Through bands and doing touring on our own. We had done all of our, like, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months of van touring, and had recorded and released the EP, right? So we had put out Audio Boxer as kind of like maybe, we'll just get the word out. And what was, I think, the craziest thing about that moment was like K-Rock in LA picked up If You See Jordan off of the EP. And we had just we recorded that EP in like a week and a half, all to tape. Like, it was very, it was kind of like meant to be like a little, I don't know, something that we just kind of handed out at shows as we prepared to record the major label record, right? But even then, like, as I'm driving to production rehearsals for Leaving Through the Window at, like, I want to say the end of 2001, If You See Jordan is getting played on K-Rock, which is like the biggest radio station in LA, and so when we were going into Leaving Through the Window, we there was this new layer of pressure that we hadn't really anticipated, because we thought that the big album would be when we put out a single. And so you're driving to the studio and you're hearing one of your songs on the radio and going like, oh fuck, like we've got to figure this out, like we got to, and we had a lot of songs, but a lot of songs got written in that period of time. Like I Woke Up in a Car was written coming home from that first tour. Not the first tour, but the first like big tour. And so that was like written right before we started producing, pre-producing the record. And yeah, it was just all this like anticipation and all this like hope, like, oh my gosh, like maybe we can be a big band too, and we're recording that record, and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers are recording down the hall from us, and like it was this like very like the ground floor for like dreaming about what could be.
How you kind of touched on it a little bit. You're like, I didn't really listen to like a ton of punk, and I didn't really listen to a lot of artists that were on Drive Through. And you're kind of bringing a musical style that wasn't really in the scene, like to this scene in particular, which is a very, how these guys are, how everybody is. What was like your, how was the reception from other artists to what Something Corporate was bringing, and how did you deal with either? What, I don't know, it could be amazing. Everybody could have been like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. But
well, I mean, the Drive Through bands were so supportive, right? They and again, it was like I came to love all of that music once I was exposed to it, right? And certainly elements of those bands showed up in records for us, because all of a sudden these are the bands that we're playing with, right? But the initial reaction from bands like Homegrown and Phoenix TX and the Finch, those guys, like and Alistair, they were like kind of in our like inaugural class or whatever, the Finch especially, eventually the Starting Line. I think they all saw sort of what Richard and Stephanie saw in the band, and it gave me hope. But I also was like very scared to play for those audiences, because I remember like I went and saw Starting Line open up for Face to Face when I was, I don't know, probably maybe 6-8 months before I even got word of the drive-through deal being a thing. And I really loved the show, but I remember thinking to myself, like, these people would eat my band alive. You know what I mean? Like we were like playing in a similar venue. They were playing a House of Blues. I was about to do a headlining show at the House of Blues. And I was like, this looks very different. Like I'd never been at a show where people moshed or crowd surfed or whatever, it just like was so foreign to me. So I was really apprehensive, but also really excited. I was just like, well, we're going to make records and we'll find the audience that is right for the band. Maybe it's not this audience, but hysterically, like Leaving Through the Window, we more or less debuted that record on the Warped Tour. It came out in May, and I think the first big tour we did was Warped Tour. And, it was definitely to mixed reactions that we rolled that piano onto stage at the Warped Tour before people knew who we were. But it was also like you watched from the first day of that tour to the last day of the tour, like the audience grew like every day. It was like the word got out sort of slowly until by the end we were like, got to play the Sunset slot in like, I think it was Detroit, and it was like 10,000 people or something crazy. Or at least that's how it felt in the moment. And yeah, we were a little bit of a square peg in a round hole, but I was, especially looking back now, I'm like delighted the fact that people even count us as a part of the scene.
It's cool because TJ and I have an agency that is doing a lot of creative for Warped Tour this year, and so there's about 700 hours of footage.
Wow.
There's probably more, man, but like scrubbing, I've had to scrub through a lot of it, and dude, I honestly, out of like most of that footage, the standout stuff was you. It was something corporate.
Really? That's amazing.
It's fucking awesome. I actually wish that I saved it. I didn't know we were going to be doing this interview because it was really it's like very, very cool. It is. You're right. It feels, bring a piano on stage on Warped Tour. It seems out of the ordinary, but you made it work, and it worked really well.
Well, it's funny to be in a situation with, bands who are like, and we took shit. People were like, this isn't punk rock. And I always be like, I know. I couldn't,
I didn't say it was.
Like, so when people hated me for not being punk, I was like, dude, I get it. Like, we got invited here. Like, you were going to turn down this opportunity, but I think it's funny now when I think about it, it's like, weirdly, the most dangerous thing you can do at a punk show is not be punk, and I think somehow there was like a bizarre meta effect on the audience where it was like, oh, maybe this is dangerous just by its lack of danger, and yeah, I have no idea how it worked, but I'm glad it did.
Yeah. Do you think that, because you've had, what we know of, like what three public projects, right? Like, do you think that if you didn't take something corporate out on the Warped Tour, like what those projects, like what do you think, how, like, do you think Warped Tour was like influential in the growth of your musical journey into these other projects, and like, would have looked so different if you didn't get that Warped Tour experience? Totally.
Look, it's like so hard. I've learned better than to like play the sliding doors game with my life, because it's just is what what's happened has happened. But I can say this for sure. There's certainly still fans that I'll see at Wilderness shows who saw my band at Warped Tour, and beyond that, as a touring artist and as a working musician, nothing could have prepared me more for this life than the Warped Tour did in multiple ways. One, from a work ethic standpoint, no brainer. You're playing sometimes you're playing 7 days, 8 days in a row, loading your own gear, having to figure out how to play well when a lot of times you can't really hear that well, or it's you're just throwing your shit on a stage and trying to go. We had guys on that tour that really made a point to like pull us aside, sometimes bluntly, and be like, "You're not fucking good right now. You need to figure it out." You know, like we had the monitor guy on our stage was just like, "Do you guys want to go home? Because this isn't gonna work." Like within the first couple of days of us being there, and it like forced everybody to like learn just, dude, you got to tune your guitar every song, you know, like just all of the most basic sort of things. But I think even more importantly, it taught me crowd work. It taught me that, you know, because a lot of the times we were getting on stage in front of audiences where some percentage of the audience wanted to fucking hate me, right? And wanted to challenge my band as not belonging, and would be vocal about that. A lot of middle fingers, a lot of stuff thrown, you know, that kind of thing. And it gave me and the guys, I think, a really thick skin, one, but it also taught me that if you push past that in the right way, and if you confront those who don't want to like your band in a way that says like, that's okay, but we're here and we're going to fucking kill it, you can make fans out of those people. And so it really taught me how to be a good opening act. It taught me how to, you know, how to not collapse under the pressure of resistance from an audience, but instead to lean into being the best version of your band that you can be. And I take those lessons with me onto stage every day.
Let's jump a little bit back to the recording process of this album. So you had done the Audio Boxer EP sort of on your own. You mentioned you guys just kind of did that like as a placeholder while your deal was getting worked out. What was it like stepping into this, you know, larger budget professional producer? You're working with Jim Wirt like in a real studio environment. Like, what were those days like? And you know, in general, what was the biggest changes that you had to adjust to going into the studio for the first time?
Well, I mean, I think just the scale of the production was huge. We pre-produced much like we had worked in the past, right? So we did our pre-production in a very humble spot out in the valley, where we just grinded on the songs and learned them so that we were ready to go in to record, right? So that was all really natural. That was just like garage band 101, except for the fact that we had a producer in the room with us going, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? You know? But that was band practice. But when we went into cello, which I think is East West Studios now, we were in the big room at cello. And this guys like Frank Sinatra recorded there, the Beach Boys. There was a real sense of stepping onto hollow ground, right? Like the tracking room is where they recorded orchestras in the 50s and the 60s, you know? And so I think it created this sense of needing to like rise to the occasion and make something important, right? Because we were in this amazing space. And like I said, like I'm walking past the Heartbreakers every day when I walk into the studio. Like I'm seeing, like Tom Petty was my hero growing up. And I'm seeing him when I walk in the door of the studio, you know, and just going like, holy fuck, like, do you belong here? You know? So yeah, it was so cool. And I was like, we got to like stay in apartments in Marina Del Rey, you know, like my girlfriend's coming to spend the night and I've got my own like place, you know, like it was so cool, but we worked 10, 12-hour days, you know, and there was also like, you know, I think so the bulk of the tracking took place at cello, which was great. And then we sort of decamped into 4th Street where we did the EP and where I subsequently recorded Jack's Mannequins, Everything in Transit record. It's like, it was been like my recording home forever. But but yeah, and in the time that we were at cello, we had this guy named, I think it's Patrick Shevlin was his name, and he was one of the original like Death Row, I think it was Death Row engineers. So like he had all these amazing like loops and samples from like the Death Row days, and like so like the recording of the astronaut, that all that stuff is like off of like, you know, his sample library from when he was working on these like iconic hip hop and rap records and stuff like that, you know, like and I got to record strings on the astronaut and Kavanaugh Park and Not What It Seems with Paul Buckmaster in that studio in cello, you know, 60 and the 36-piece orchestra in this room. You're watching. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah, you were so, you know, you were so young too. Like, did you feel like, I mean, was it a surreal thing to, you're like, I'm kind of in charge of this 36-piece orchestra. Like, is that like, and I'm walking past Tom Petty. Did you ever like, Tom Petty? Like, I mean,
once.
is this like like, you know, because you're you know, like you're a young kid doing this album.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think hearing about what you're saying and what we have done our research on, feel like there's got to be this overarching overwhelmingness of the entire thing.
I was pretty confident. You know, I mean, like it took me years to be as insecure as I am now. I think, you know, from the time that I started writing songs, I was just like, this is my destiny, right? Like I just knew somewhere in my bones the first time I sat down at a piano and a song showed up, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? So I had this sense, that this is what I was meant to be doing. And so getting the deal, you know, and seeing the band get more popular and then getting to be in that studio, I don't think I had like an imposter syndrome thing or anything. I think we were like, you know, the guys, we were all friends. We had a producer that we trusted. We had a label that believed in us. You know, I think we wanted to make it great, but I don't think at that point I was feeling so much like the pressure of it. I felt the weight of the importance of the moment, but it wasn't like this thing, like you're not going to pull it off. It was just like, you have to show up here and do it right and do it well every day. And, but you know, you're sort of ground zero on like your dreams coming true. Right. And so that part of it was always was very romantic. It was just like, oh my God, like we're hearing our song on the radio. We're going into the studio. We've been offered this tour. We've been offered the Warped Tour. And so I just think there was this kind of kinetic, sort of energetic thing where we were sort of swept up in it, and we were just showing up every day and getting on the ride.
How did you end up working with Jim Wirt? Was that a choice that you made, or a label suggestion, or how did that end up happening?
We met with a bunch of people. Jim, at the time, he had some connection, I think, to our lawyer, and through him, through his hat in the ring. We met with a handful of people, and I just think we had this connection to Jim when we met with him, that you know, we liked his work with Incubus at the time, and a handful of others, and just got this sense that he kind of got it. I think in hindsight now, knowing Jim as well as I do, like he was a Midwest kid transported in California, and I was a Midwest kid transported in California. I think maybe there was just some underlying language that we sort of spoke to each other, that was born out of a similar sort of journey of like, yeah, like grew up the weirdo musician in the middle of the country, and found myself in California, and found like this was my home. And I think that we spoke that language for a lot of years together, right? But yeah, I think it was just an initial thing. We worked with them on the EP, and then we had such a good time on the EP, and it was already kind of paying off. And we were like, let's dig deeper into this relationship and develop it.
You know, listening back to the album, obviously it was a big influence on myself and like pretty much every single person I grew up with. And I kind of got to listen to these things with a new set of lenses, but like ears.
Yeah.
So, and I was talking to a couple of friends about it, and I was like, dude, I'm talking to Andrew and ask him questions about this thing, talk about it, and overarchingly they were all saying, or they all said that this album could not have been written by in a romantic. They said it romantically. This is not like a thing.
Yeah.
They're like, this album was written by a kid in the best way possible. They all said that. They were like, that's what made me relate to it. And listening back, I was like, damn, dude, you know what? That it really does really feel like that. And so, playing these songs now and going back and revisiting them and, lyrically and musically, are you 100% satisfied with this? Are there things that you wish you would have changed? Like, or is you're just like in the moment, this is what it needed to be. And I'm happy that it is that.
Look, there are songs on Leaving Through the Window that we don't really play, or honestly probably never really played. But no, I wouldn't change it. I think the thing for me, I mean, that's the greatest compliment I could get, because that's true. It's like the years that the songs were written for this record were like age, 15 or 16 to 19, and what a beautiful time to be alive, right? Like, I just think of that. I still think romantically about those teenage years. Like, that is, you do so much growing up, you do so much living, you figure so much shit out, your heart gets broken in such a deep and brutal way, and you love harder in such a beautiful way. And to have like a sonic sort of snapshot of that, and also and then to have that be celebrated by people. Do I love the way my voice sounds on those early records? Not really. Sometimes, right? Like, was I still figuring out what it meant to be a recording artist versus a kid in a garage band? Yeah. Were there choices that like I wouldn't make now that I made then? Of course. Right. But that's why it's like a celebrated time capsule, I think, is because it really is earnest and heartfelt and very true. Even in its worst moments, like it is honest,
Yeah, that was honestly everybody that I was talking to, and then made me look at it from that perspective. And I agree. I think that is probably the best compliment you can get about this. I have a lot of stuff to go. I don't know how long.
As long as I'm out of here in like 10 minutes, I'm in good shape. So
great. Well,
hit me. I'll go lightning round. I'll try not to ramble so much.
Okay. Personal.
Oh, no, I've got at least 15 minutes. No, you guys are good. Maybe even 15 or 20.
All right, then why don't we just do the fun stuff then? I feel like we've done this, but like in my opinion, piano is the coolest thing that anybody can do. I think it is by far. It's always been like because I don't know how to do it. I'm fucking terrible at it. And there, the trope of like, I got a guy playing guitar at a party and then everybody's like, this is lame. And in my head, I imagine it is so much classier if somebody just like walks up to the piano and like does that at a party, and then everybody is blown away. And I have this fucking fantasy where I do that and it's classy and amazing. Has that, if you ever done that, like just been at not an event or a thing, but just like there's been a piano at a place and you have just sat down and you're like, everybody's fucking blown away.
Look, I'm not gonna speak to the everybody being blown away part, but I definitely in high school, if there was a piano at a party, I was the asshole who sat down at it and played.
I don't think that's the asshole. I think that most people would look at that as awesome, as opposed to viewing somebody playing an acoustic guitar as incredibly lame. Like
but like that was because the thing is, you have to realize, like, especially early in high school, like before I started the band and had that outlet, like there wasn't, like at least when you're a kid and you play guitar, you can be the kid at the party with the guitar or whatever. Like, but if I found a piano, half the reason I did theater in high school was because like there was a piano in the theater, and I could play songs for people, and it was a way for me to figure out if the songs I was writing were any good. So yeah, I used to do that very often. I wouldn't be caught dead doing it now, but it definitely happened.
Yeah, it's just like a mysterious thing. Like, who's that fucking guy walking up? Anyway, all right, I'm lightning around this fun shit. You were every time I do these things, I kind of look at them like from what I would think as, and there's a lot of shit that's like, Andrew is a prodigy. Were you like, oh, it says it, like it's there on the internet, whatever. Were you, just by the face, like, how did you feel about that when people told you that? And it sounds like you were super self-aware of your surroundings, but did that affect you? And did your peers, like, did they hear that and they're like, fuck this guy immediately before they even met you, and they were like, I love this guy?
Well, like when I was young, I was a really awkward kid, right? And I was overweight. there was the one thing I had going for me was that I could write songs and play piano. You know what I mean? And so I think of musical prodigies. I think of like Beethoven, right? But the one thing that I will say is that the finding songwriting and the piano and the circuit as a whole, singing, writing, playing, that just hit me like a bolt of lightning. Like it was like an instantaneous thing. I sat down one day and it just came to me. It felt divine in it, and it became the only thing I wanted to do every waking hour of the day. And so it wasn't something that I paraded around other than in my house to my family, because that's, like they were there and subjected to the, 6-8 hours of me at the piano every day. But when I got, probably into like the 5th grade, there was a piano in my classroom, and that was kind of the beginning of that identity as somebody who had a unique skill set. And it was really like, and my peers were pretty good to me about it. They liked that I had this talent, and it was a good party trick, like as a kid to be able to like, I wrote a new song, but I sort of, I recoil a little at the prodigy moniker, because I just feel like I do feel like I was given some sort of gift that I'm very grateful for, but like, as far as piano players, there are dudes who can do that. That can run circles around me all day long.
Yeah, prodigy is like an interesting thing, because when you think about, a prodigy, like a chess prodigy, or like where's the creative place to do that? And you get it with songwriting. It's just an interesting way. Anyway, I have
a loaded word. That's for sure.
It's a big word to say.
My mom thinks that I was a prodigy.
Good. So. That's kind of all that matters. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the only thing that matters. There's like I have a funny story that I think I told you one instance, and then there's another one that I haven't shared with you. But during the pandemic, you were recording with, or like did a session at like Susie Shin's house, and I lived with Susie over that time. And I woke up one morning and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, Susie, stop playing. Like, I love this guy, but I love this album, but turn it the fuck down. Like, it's in the morning, I'm trying to go to fucking sleep, and I walk out in the living room and you are playing the piano. I was like, is Jack's like, well, you're playing Jack's Mannequin so loud, turn it the fuck down. And I just, yeah, you're doing something. Yeah, you were literally, you were doing, I think you were just like testing the piano in the thing.
That's so funny. Was it, are you sure it wasn't the recording when we were recording that New Year's song?
No, it was, you were literally had just sat down and played something that was recognizable to me. I don't remember if it was Jack's Mannequin or something corporate. It was like, it sounded like the album, and I was like, shut the fuck up. And I walk out and it's just you sitting next to it. I was like, all right. It's like a very funny story to think about. There have been a couple times, man, where you have popped into my life and done some significant things. So I can't imagine, what it is like for everybody who is a fan of you. There's another thing that I think about almost daily with you that you'll have no idea. And it was the I got sober in 2008.
Okay.
I didn't stay sober, but I did get sober in 2008.
I got drunk in 2008.
So I got very
Pretty much
drunk.
all of 2008.
It's like there was that's why I'm in California. I basically moved to California to get sober. And when I got shipped out here, and then there was a moment where, you're in rehab and everything still sucks and whatever. And I was listening to the first song, Holiday for Real, like fucking that song. I remember exactly where I was, exactly like what I was going through. And I was sitting there and I was like, you know what? I want to get fucked up today, but I want to not get fucked up more. And so it was like, I still wanted that. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life. And it's, I think it's a very strange thing. I don't remember anything. I have no memory. And that's like one of the best memories I have about you. And I can't imagine like what, you hear every fucking show you play, because if that's my experience, then, everybody that's grown up and finding you now, it's gotta be overwhelming. And I'm just like, does that ever get too much?
No, honestly, like I try to temper the way I speak about this, because I think it maybe could come across like bullshit, but it's not. Like this is like a 2-part process for me, and it's taken me years to really realize this, but like I write songs first for myself, right? Like it's like, how do you get in here and understand yourself and put that out, like, and it's like almost like it helps me to understand where I'm at in my life. But it's not fully satisfying until that thing ends up in the world and the circle gets completed by it connecting with another person, right? Preferably with lots of people, obviously, and I feel weirdly like, if you know my song or if you've connected with my song in a deep way, then we sort of know each other in a way, right? Like there's a shared experience here, and it's like, and I sort of know you too, like, and I having done this for so long and having made fans along the way, but also having fans who've stayed on board for years at a time and go to so many shows, like I really cherish those stories and being able to like connect with people about that. Cause to me, it's like, it's it's just one more piece of evidence that like, I'm doing this, to make a connection to, you know what I mean? Like, and it really like, that's what I look for when I'm on a stage or something like that. It's like, I don't want to throw my show at you. I want your show to come up on stage with me. Like I think of this as such a deep and beautiful, art form, and I'm like fully here for it. Dude, in that way, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. And I know that it's a lame thing for me to say, and B, a lame thing to like I get the entire thing. Do you remember like the first time anybody, I feel like with your music specifically, there's got to be a lot more of this type of shit than with a lot of other types of music. And do you remember like, are there any moments back in the something corporate time where this was the first time somebody did one of these things to you, and you're a kid and you're like, what the fuck? My music connects with somebody?
It's interesting. Like I can't say like I remember like a specific example. And I think, you know, it's interesting because I think that they started happening a lot more later. You know, I mean, you remember what that scene was like. It was like we were what 19, 20-year-old kids playing to 12 to 14-year-old kids at
Yeah.
that point. Right. You know, and so like I don't remember like having those kinds of like deep conversations. It was also like that scene was so much different. Like you'd rush out and it'd be like chaos and you'd sign autographs. You know, I think it was really once I got into the Jack's Mannequin world and those kids had kind of grown up and come into that space. And, you know, because I had put so much of myself out there with being sick, you know, I think that's when I think these conversations really started coming into my life and my world. But I know they existed with the Something Corporate days. But I think my memory of those days is like a little bit like, you know, just being on this carousel ride that was kind of, everything was just like going by so fast because everything was so new, you know?
I mean, we did not touch on about a bazillion things I want to talk about. We haven't talked about you being sick, you as a dad, you as an author, any of that stuff. So, but I know you got to dip out.
Yeah, I got 5 more. You hit me with the leaving through the window questions. You got.
Let me just let's bring it back full circle here, because the first thing we talked about, you know, was how you're working on this thing for South by about reinventing yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these songs, have you found a connection to your younger self now through some of these older songs that you're playing them again? And have any of them taken on a new meaning for you now that you've gone through so many iterations and versions of yourself in your life?
And have kids?
I think it's like revisiting the person you were at a different moment, right? Like, and like, especially with doing this with the Something Corporate guys this past year, it was like, I still felt very grounded in myself as the man I am now when I was on that stage. But there was something like, it was just like this, almost this alternate dimension, right? Where it's like, I'm on stage for the first time really with that lineup, you know, in this stage of my life and playing these older songs and seeing fans like relate to who they were in that experience. It was almost like a completely different person. You know what I mean? It was like, it was this trifecta of nostalgia, love for my brothers who I hadn't shared this live experience with in so long. And then also this reconnecting to the early version of myself writing music, right? And to Josh's songs too. That it was like grounded in the present, but somehow was riding this additional pathway of like really beautifully, like reliving memories, but getting to relive Something Corporate almost with like a more sort of sober present kind of mindset, because it wasn't all bound up in like, what's the next record and the next major decision we have to make. It was like, we're just celebrating, you know? And yeah, it was a little bit like, you know, visiting your former self, you know, but in like the most joyful kind of like, not feeling regret for anything, not feeling like I could have done this or could have done that differently, but just going like, this was so cool. And how lucky were we that we got to live it and then we're getting to relive it again.
TJ and I were out of town for the show that you played over in Venice a couple weeks ago or a month ago, something like that. And my friend did go see you, and she said that you brought your daughter there.
Yeah, she came out.
Yeah, it's like, you know, just really cool, and a cool thing. It's like, are your kids like fans of you? What do they like? You know, are they fans of a specific project or a version of you? Do they dislike a version of you? Like, what's their take on Andrew McMahon?
So Cecilia, I mean, obviously grew up on tour with The Wilderness, you know, and there's so many songs about her in that catalog. So I think, you know, it's like, that's sort of what she came up with, right? Was being on in you know, kind of in the band and in the bus for her early years. She loves Leaving Through the Window, which is like so fun. Like she knows that record. I think it's because it's like one of the records I had around the house, but she took that. She like, and so it's interesting because I'm getting, as I'm rewalking this path through my sort of musical life and history, she's walking it with me too. So she was out for the Something Corporate shows. Now she knows those songs. I'm excited that we're going to do Jack's Mannequin this year, and she's going to like, get a chance to sort of experience what that was like. But yeah, she's a fan, I guess. She loves what I do for a living. She loves musical theater and wants to be a singer and an actor and be on a stage. And so I think it's been something that's been really cool for us to share. And it's also fun to get to kind of play these old songs for her and her be like, what? Like, is that you? And see what she's turned on by. But she really did love Leaving Through the Window.
Yeah. Is she a good barometer for like what is good and what is bad? You're like, if you play something, she's like, no.
I trust her. I also am like, I'm so self-conscious. Like when I play things for people, that I'm very nervous about playing things for her specifically. Cause I will, if she doesn't react, I'll just be like, it's shit. I'm not gonna
All right, dude. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and getting on the podcast with us. It's great to see you, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for listening and caring about the record. That means a lot to me.
Dude, you're awesome. Everything you do kicks ass.
Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
All right,
dude.
Bye.
Peace.
Cheers.